Daniel calling in. Daniel, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, how's it going?
All's well. Calling in on Skype. Our username is lrn.fm.
So I had a couple questions. Well, I guess just one about taxes, and I asked Adam Kokesh the same question a while ago. I really love him, and I'm glad you had him on the show.
Libertarian superstar Adam Kokesh. Yep, does a
yeah.
Yep.
So he had kind of two really good answers to this, but I want to see what exactly your perspective is before I say what he said. But basically, I think most libertarian or liberty-oriented people would agree that a lot of our tax money, a significant portion of it, goes to bad things. It goes to killing people. It goes to wars and things like that, right?
Okay.
Yep.
And so because of that, a lot of people try not to pay taxes whenever they can. And I think that would make sense. That seems like a good thing. But my question is, well, at the same time, a lot of people do. They have no choice. Well, they kind of have a choice, but really they have to pay taxes. Like even people that believe it's killing people will still pay sales tax because that's just what they have to do when they go to the
or the
store.
gas tax or whatever. Sure.
It's pretty hard to get around.
I don't think there's a U.S. Government sales tax, so you're probably not funding war with a sales tax.
Sure, but gas tax is still pretty.
Your cell phone bill still is. And
yeah.
Certainly your income tax.
Okay, so basically I was wondering, like, isn't that kind of selfish to be like, well, I think that this money is going to kill people and I don't want to kill you, but if you're going to threaten to put me in prison, in that case, yeah, here, take my money. It's okay. They'll let.
Did we lose him?
Yeah, I think we lost Daniel Brown, but I've got the gist of what he said there. I'll just, I think we can answer it. So
sure.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess you could start with me if you want.
Sure.
As far as, is it selfish? Certainly, but then every act is selfish, of course. I think at the end of the day, when you get to the bottom line of anything that you do, it is always a very selfish act. But as far as, how is this okay that you keep doing that? It's very important to keep in mind that this is something you have to do very much under duress. At some point, you are going to be paying some kind of taxes, or at the end of that line, you are going to get a gun. A man with a gun breaking down your door.
Or just even if you manage to avoid all taxes, you're still going to be subject to inflation if you don't use Bitcoin exclusively or whatever, which is harder to do.
And that's really a really important point because much of the budgeting for the U.S. government comes from inflation. It comes from money that they're never going to pay. The people that work there in the United States government and all of us listening will all be dead, and it will never get paid for. The United States government's lowest debt rate was under Andrew Jackson, who changed over from the Second National Bank to gold as a currency. The lowest debt was in the five figures. I think it was about $40,000. It might have been 20, and that was a lot of money in the ninth president. So I mean, you're talking about the early 1800s. It was a lot of money, but not anything on the scale of what we have today. But we can see the U.S. government is still essentially paying off principal from World War I.
Right.
I mean, this money never gets paid back. The principal never gets paid back. It never comes back. So your grandchildren will be paying the interest on principal that you've spent. And that's immoral. As far as the answer to his question, I should answer his question. I think that when you're under duress, you really can't be held responsible for what you do. If somebody says, hey, I've got your kid here and I'm going to shoot him, unless you go ahead and drive this train full of people to the gas chambers. I don't think anybody can be held responsible for the decision they make in that moment in time.
Yeah,
it's obviously a decision of duress.
Yeah, if the important thing is to be conscious of what you're doing, of where that money's going, and then yes, you can be careful to the best of your ability of perhaps how you spend your money or whatever, or you can go to using alternative currencies like Bitcoin and altcoins and all that stuff to even get out of that system entirely. But that's really all you can do, because no matter where you move to, unless you go run off to an island, I mean, you're gonna be funding death somewhere because there's governments
because war
everywhere.
is the health of the state.
Yeah, exactly. If it's not maybe it's a domestic war or a foreign war, whatever. And so I think the important thing is you have to be conscious of it. And when you are, that's the best that you can do. And you can educate people and when you pay that gas tax, then, just use it wisely and hopefully maybe educate people more on what's going on, because that's the only way it's ever going to change. Really not paying taxes. Yes, I agree that would be a very interesting form of activism to get into. Okay.
It would be darn near impossible. Yeah. And it might put you in the irrelevant category, because a lot of people, in order to get out of paying taxes, what they do is they make less money. And when you make less money, what you're doing is making less of an impact.
That's basically the only way to do it legally. And then you still have to worry. Like, I actually know someone who tried to do this, and he was pretty close to successful if you define success as actually not paying any taxes. But what he did was he lived in the woods in a trailer on someone else's land. He barely earned or spent any money, used bartered for silver whenever possible, never went out to restaurants, would refuse to go out to eat at restaurants because didn't want to pay the restaurant tax, actually didn't eat anything with corn syrup or corn in it because corn is one of the most heavily subsidized crops, didn't have a driver's license, wouldn't really drive, and came pretty close, but it really affected his life. It was really hard to hang out with that person.
Yeah, it's got to affect your health. And again, how can you educate people if you can't even take them out to lunch? I mean, that's like an easy way, get somebody over their stomach, if you want to get a message out to them or something. So yeah, I just, it's to some degree, unfortunately, it's very unavoidable. But if you're conscious of it,
at that point, why don't you just go live in another country? I mean, really, just go permanent traveler. Yeah. That's a better solution because you don't have to sacrifice, your creature comforts. And
the United States government is one of the few that requires its citizens to pay money when
not if you make less than $100,000 a year.
90, I think,
or 80, somewhere around there.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.